is any lull.
We're recording.
There we go. We're live, dude.
Yeah, that's fun. So yeah, for the audience, Demetrios and I were basically, this is always how it happens though, right? Right before you do hit record on the podcast, it basically feels like a podcast. So you're just like, oh, we could be recording this. So
yes, we should be. Well, I will say, man, I have a podcast tomorrow that I'm doing in Portuguese. It's with the Brazilian community data hackers, and it's going to be in Portuguese. I haven't spoken Portuguese like at length for probably 12 years. So tonight I'm going to just be madly preparing. Like, you know, the Olympics is going on right now. I'm going to be training for the Olympics in the span of a 24-hour sprint.
How do you do that? I mean, if you haven't spoken Portuguese in a long time, like what do you remember it at all? Or are you pretty fluent still, or is it like a very foreign language to you?
So we'll see tomorrow, I guess. We may have to do it in English. I may be quite bullish on my Portuguese skills to think that I could do it, especially because there's going to be a lot of technical talk. And so it's going to be fun to say hallucination in Portuguese, not what I'm used to. But the interesting piece is I'll probably just watch a lot of Portuguese YouTube or Brazilian, because I get along more with Brazilian Portuguese, and I'll probably be watching Brazilian YouTube tutorials on like RAG and AI news, just so I can familiarize myself with all the specific terminology.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll see.
We will. That's good, dude. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Do you need an introduction? I think it feels like a lot of people know who you are, but
that would be a little conceited of me to say I need no introduction. Of course, everyone should know who I am.
Well, okay. I mean, we go through the step of introducing the guest. Demetrios, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
So I started the MLOps community back in 2020. Before that, I was not very technical. And I remember saying to some friends who were, how do you choose the right preposition for Kubernetes? I was wondering, is it at Kubernetes? Is it in Kubernetes? And they were like, no, you could do things on Kubernetes. So that was my life before the community. Later, the community started. I didn't know what exactly to do with my life because I had lost my job. And so I invested a lot of time and energy into the community, and it just ended up taking off. That's how we met. I know that I interviewed you and have since become a loyal, devoted fan of, look what I got out. I busted out your book.
Oh, you got your book finally.
With all kinds of highlights and dedication.
That's super cool. That's super cool to see. For the audience out there too, I gave Demetrios a signed copy of the book. I think it was end of June. But I had to give it to one of your friends. We were supposed to meet for coffee, and you ended up going to the coffee shop clear across San Francisco instead of the one we were supposed to meet at. So that was pretty funny. But I'm glad that your friend is an honest person and gave the book.
Yes.
Part of me is like, he's just going to take the book and run with it.
Yeah. He was actually like, hey, this looks like a really good book. Maybe you aren't going to get it. And I had to reassure him that it was a great book, but he should buy his own copy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you've been doing the community for a long time, right? I mean, that's how we met, and it was definitely it felt like it was the COVID project, at least from where I sit, right? But then it's become something a lot bigger, obviously. So
it was. It had the incredible grace of starting right when everything moved online. So because of that, we were able to really harness that energy of people were locked inside and they wanted something to do. MLOps was becoming more and more popular as a term. And so we just caught that lightning in a bottle, I think. And then I remember there was a moment where I had been reaching out to people to tell them to come join the community on LinkedIn. And I stopped doing that because I had to focus my attention on other things. But I had the Slack notification on every time someone would join the community. And I kept getting notified that people were still joining. And so it was like, whoa, maybe there's something here. And that was in June 2020, and then kind of took off and has become much more than a Slack workspace.
It seems to be, yeah. It's definitely more than a Slack workspace. Like, you're having conferences now. You've been doing lots of events, I think, for a long time. But yeah, it's taken on. It's cool to see. Like, because I remember it was. What were you doing back in the day? I mean, it was kind of like podcasts, maybe some Slack stuff. It was pretty basic stuff.
Exactly, the technical term, Slack stuff.
Slack stuff.
We were really, I think it started and is still very technical and very high quality Slack conversations, like real time Stack Overflow and stuff that you can't really find on Stack Overflow, stuff you can't prompt GPT to answer your question. And so getting to be able to have access to peers who are doing things or have done potentially the same thing as you is always valuable, especially when you're in the ML space that's evolving and changing each day. So we were doing that, but as soon as we could, we started doing local meetups around the globe. And my idea around that was saying, let's just do a distributed model and let anyone who wants to start a chapter, and let's figure out how we can support the folks who want to do something. So we call them local champs. And if somebody wants to start a chapter, we give you all the documentation and everything you need, and then it's off to the races and you get to hold a meetup.
How many do you have at this point?
So active, we've got like 20 plus, and that's from Melbourne to Amsterdam to Lagos, Nigeria, New York, San Francisco, all of that.
Salt Lake City.
How could we forget the SLC? So then I think over the course of the years, we've had some people come and give some or organize some meetups, and then life happens, and so they can't organize it, and they couldn't find another co-organizer. So all in all, I think over 37 cities have, I think 37 cities have had at least one meetup.
That's super cool. Yeah, I know the one in Salt Lake, it's regular. We do it every month. We get some good speakers, and we've actually got speakers from outside of the community to come in or outside the area to come in and talk. So that's super cool to see. It's a brand name now. Walk me through this. So like, what was it like? Kind of starting out at the beginning days of the MLOps community. You're just trying to get off the ground. I mean, you just I think you got laid off, and like this was kind of. Let's just see what happens with this. Like, walk me through what was going through your mind at the time.
Yeah. So the company I was working for went out of business because they were doing data lineage in a time, and it was really like data provenance for ML when people weren't really even doing ML, let alone having success with ML. So we were around doing that in 2019, and anybody who was in the space in 2019 knows that it wasn't that mature in those days.
Not at all.
So the company was doomed to fail. I think data provenance is very low on the priority list when you're trying to just see if you can do ML. And that happened. The company went out of business, but I kept putting energy and time into the community because I first and foremost wanted to learn. And I also was trying to use it as an excuse to get out of what I was in, which was sales. And so I just took the same sales mentality, but now instead of selling people on a product, I was selling them on coming into a community. And then it turns out there's a lot of things that you can do in a community to help get people engaged, which I just was trying to, I don't know why or how it came to me. It was channeled, we could say. But it's like, just get people to talk about what they're working on. And if I see some posts about what people are working on, and then later on that week, somebody asks a question that's tangentially related, let's tag the person who was talking about it earlier on in the week to weigh in. And I think the best thing that could have happened was that I did not have a technical background. So I couldn't be the person that was answering the questions. And now I like to say I know enough buzzwords to be dangerous. And so I've learned since then, it's been 4 years of basically interviewing people 2-3 times a week on what they're doing, how they're finding success with their machine learning and AI projects. But in those days, I was just so oblivious that we had those first podcasts, and I would have to ask my technical friends what kind of questions I should be asking. And then when I asked the questions on the podcast, people would give an answer, and I would sit there just stone-faced and then go directly to the next question. There was no back and forth. There was no trying to assimilate because I had no idea what they just said.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the crux of podcasting, and I think it's a skill though that if you keep at it long enough, you sort of like learn through osmosis in a weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I listen to your podcast now, I'd be like, yeah, dude knows what he's talking about. He's crazy good at all things ML. But you talk to a lot of experts in the field, and if that's who you're with, like 3 times a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that it does have some added benefits. So
osmosis, exactly.
Osmosis, yeah, you just
can't help it. It wore off on me, and so it's been fun since. And now I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how it's really not that complicated to understand what is happening with ML projects or AI projects. What happens, and I think it can make a lot of people disillusioned when they're getting into the space, is that especially when it comes to ML and AI, they go into how do I train an LLM? And that is not what it's like. Figure out what the ecosystem is, figure out what the landscape is first, and then what things do and why they do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I loved your book, because it really gives you a lay of the land before it says, now dive in and figure out how to fix that loss curve.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, you see these cycles in machine learning, right? And I can't believe that AI is sort of lumped into all this stuff now, because it's still not AI in my opinion, but whatever. Yeah. That's a term we've adopted, so we're
going with it. Exactly. We're on the same page.
Reluctant. But... yeah, it is interesting because I mean, you started the MLOps community, I think, around the time that GPT-3 I think came out, right? Mm-hmm. GPT was about a year before in 2019, and I remember during COVID, a lot of us were dorking around on Zoom calls, like, "Oh, let's play with GPT-3," and I forgot about it. Actually, totally forgot. I was like, "That's cool. If we need to use it at some point, great. If not, whatever." Then ChatGPT comes roaring back in 2022, late 2022, and kind of the rest is history, so to speak. But it is interesting because I think, especially you have a good perspective where you sort of. When you started the community, it was really when the MLOps movement was sort of hitting it was kind of on the way up, right? Hit a crescendo, and it's still going. But there was the MLOps hype, right? And all the associated stuff like feature stores. I think we were joking there should be a mumble rap about feature stores. I think maybe you and David Ponte may have done one.
I can't believe I never made that. Now I can just make it with AI. Oh, we should totally do that.
It'd be dope.
The amount I had to sweat on my creativity when I was doing this stuff. Now you can just reproduce these crazy ideas with a few strokes.
Do this podcast through generative AI at some point. Your avatar talk to mine. But what I think is interesting though is when I was at Coactive's office in November giving a talk for the MLOps community there. Mm-hmm. What I thought was really fascinating was MLOps sort of felt like it was the old school thing now, because there was
Yeah.
like, I think 16 or 20 meetups in the Bay Area that night, all of which are generative AI meetups.
Of
And
course.
so, God forbid you have to talk about the practical stuff, like how this actually works, and how you do it, like the MLOps stuff. But now it's just, it seemed like it was a lot of VCs, maybe at the, at like Shack 15 or whatever it is, just, that's kind of the zeitgeist right now. And to your point, everyone's like, yeah, so how do I jump in and train an LLM? And it's like, come on, you probably don't have enough money to do that. Just saying, or resources. And two, it's like, it's probably the wrong question to ask. But I'm sure, like, from your vantage point, you get to see everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
but if you do somehow figure out a way to get enough money to train an LLM, and then you decide to wait around for 2 years and not really release a product, I've got good news for you, because there is probably an opening at big tech and they really want you to join. That's what we've been seeing.
Really interesting.
You don't think about it. Adept, what was the other one? Inflection, or I think that was the name. Inflection. They went to Microsoft, that team. Adept went to Amazon. Character AI just went to Google again. So you know what you can do is just raise a boatload of cash, say you're working on an LLM for a few years, then never release anything and go and work at big tech.
This is career advice of the day. Just do that. And I think that's actually pretty sound, right? Like, what was it? Fail up for sure. I mean, how many, I'm not sure the vantage point you have of the AI startup ecosystem, but I'd be very curious. Like, what are some of the trends you've seen over the years in terms of machine learning and MLOps and AI startup scene?
What's funny is, and hold on, let me shut this blind, because I feel like I'm looking way too much like Jesus right now.
You look like AI Jesus right now, but yeah.
That's too good. So I don't know if you're going to cut that out, but for people that are only listening, I have a strong light beam that is coming in through my window. I'm going to shut the curtains so that it's not doing that anymore.
Cool. That's Demetrios shutting his blinds right now. So. Yeah, man, it looks really good.
Soft light. Yes.
I actually kind of like the light on you, though. It was very regal. All
right, we'll go with it. I'll roll with it. So the vantage point is, it's funny because it feels like I heard this saying in Spanish once, when lots of things pop up kind of in the same area, in the same space. They call it like mushrooms. They say, oh, it's like they're popping up like mushrooms. And it feels like that happened in the MLOps space with the monitoring tools. All of a sudden, a lot of companies got a boatload of cash to do ML monitoring. And that was probably the 2020 era. You had the Arise, Aporia, Evidently, and Superwise. There was Fiddler. That's just off the top of my head, right?
Yeah, there was a lot.
I'm rattling those off. There's probably a lot more. True Era, Verta. So if I really think about it, I can go. Now I see the exact same thing happening, but it's happening in the evaluation space for AI. So you can think about so many evaluation tools that are coming out. And just off the top of my head, again, I'm thinking about Voxel 51, Vellum, there's Athena. There's so many that you have the same kind of idea, but just a little bit different. And I had a theory of why that was back in the day, which is that for VCs, it's really easy to understand that pitch of, oh, it's just like Datadog, but now for ML, because ML models need to be monitored just like software needs to be monitored, but you can't monitor it with Datadog because it's not suited for it. So you need a specific tool, and this market's going to go and it's going to blow up. So that's one of the trends that I feel like I've seen for sure. And then the other trend, which is half joking, is that everything used to be called flow. So Airflow, Kubeflow, MLflow, and now it's all called Lang. So Lang chain, Lang trace, Lang. There's so many different
That's so
Lang
true.
graph. There's so many different Langs. Lang flow is even a thing now. So they're playing
I was
like
about to
full
say,
on
yeah, there's
3D chess right there.
kind of retro, yeah,
Yeah.
hipsters. That is interesting though, yeah, because I do remember the lots of observability. They happen in the data side too, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like this weird divide between machine learning and data proper. But I think for as many of the companies you mentioned for ML observability, there was just as many doing data observability. And when I looked under the hood at a lot of these tools, I was like, y'all kind of are doing the same thing. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what the divide is. Like, you're monitoring and alerting on metrics and so forth. And,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, but the pitch of the data dog for for models was something I heard probably a dozen times from a dozen different companies, right? But now it's different. Now it's all about, yeah, like I say,
It's the
evaluation and
AI. Yeah, you got to
now
evaluate the models.
agents. That's the other one. Agents is like the big one now, and
It's
gonna be
huge.
so. Yeah,
Agents are where everything, and so there's the cynical viewpoint that you can take, and it's thinking, well, nothing has really worked out yet. We've thrown all this money into this space and we're not seeing the returns. So there must be another step that we just haven't tapped into, which are agents. Because originally it was the LLMs were going to do it, and now the LLMs haven't really proven out that much business value. They do have some, and maybe it's still too early. I will say that, but there's the cynical viewpoint of agents are the new frontier, and that's what's going to give us that return on investment. Or there is the optimistic point of view saying that it is actually a valuable piece of technology that is going to make our lives, especially the rigorous work that we have to do day in and day out, it's going to make all of that way easier. And so I have friends
yeah,
that try to do thought experiments and say, what, imagine if you just had 100 employees working for you and you had 100 assistants that you could call on at any moment. What would you have them do in your life, in your job? What would you actually have them go and do? And so that's ways of looking at it and thinking, oh, all right, maybe I can use and sometimes you don't even need an agent. Don't complicate your life with agents. Just it's like, don't go that far down the rabbit hole. Potentially an LLM call can be good enough. Potentially no AI is better than anything.
yeah. It is interesting. Like, I think that it's interesting. When you look at I think the use cases for things like agents, like software, is one of the biggest ones that comes up. Where if we can unlock the power of agents, we can write, the cost of writing software goes to zero. We can write as much software as we want. I mean, I've heard people say that there's basically a giant amount of technical debt in the world where the amount of software that needs to be written is obviously limited by the number of people that can write software. But if you have machines writing software, then the cost of software goes to zero. The abundance of software goes to infinity, and here we are. So that's, I think, the optimistic argument, and I think that would be an interesting world to see. But I've seen some people that I know working on agentic workflows and so forth, and it looks cool on the surface. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but
Yeah.
that's one possible future is definitely that.
The big
But
question with agents, right, is the reliability of them
it's a
and
huge
their
question.
ability.
Huge question. Yeah.
One
So,
really cool talk that I did see, though, that is agent related, is all about how right now the internet is built for humans to consume. But if we wanted to have agents be more the forefront of how things get done on the internet, could we re-architect or potentially just have it behind the scenes so a human could still do everything it needs to do with the internet, but then you have metadata behind the scenes that makes it much easier for an agent to understand web pages. And that had me thinking, it's a cool thought experiment to think, okay, well, because, and the use case that they gave was let's take an Amazon item. Any Amazon item, if you look at the title, it's super SEO optimized, right? So that it has all of these keywords in it. So it tries to get to the top. But really, it's just an electric toothbrush. And the colors are white and black. And so an agent, and the brand is XYZ. But if you look at the title of it, it says all these different things and the features and whatever it may be. And so if you're able to re-architect what key information is there and make that more consumable for the agent, then it can be that there's potential the agents will have an easier time and will be more reliable. The only problem is you got to kind of re-architect the internet.
What's interesting, there was a, let me see if I could find the original one. Tim Berners-Lee had written the semantic web paper. It's 2001, right? In that one, Classic. He used the word agent actually to describe basically, because his whole thing was, so HTML hypertext markup language was used mainly for constructing web pages and hyperlinks, right? That's sort of the basis of the human web. But what he proposed was a way of having metadata about the elements, to allow machines to get context as well, right? And so that vision was actually interesting. I'll put the link to you so you can read about it. But it was, so he envisioned this whole thing back a while ago.
2001, man, that's wild.
Yeah, check this out. But so that's he proposed was something called RDF, right? Which is a resource description framework, and so that was really just a way for machines to interact with data. So I mean, the context was there. The semantic web was an interesting one where I felt like the technology really wasn't around to make it a thing, but with LLMs, perhaps in agentic workflows, perhaps we're maybe able to revisit this in a real way and make it work. That would be pretty cool.
He did use agents. Wow. That's so wild.
Yeah, it's a trip.
What's old is new.
That's pretty damn old. That's a millennial. But that's
incredible.
23-year-old person at this point. So by alcohol and college. So,
I see where you're going with that.
So But the semantic web, I remember that idea was, I think, popular back in the early 2000s, but it sort of died away for a while. I won't say die away, but it was, I think people kind of moved on to other things. It was Google. I think they came up with a knowledge graph for all their stuff. And what's interesting is in the fields of machine learning now, starting to see these concepts come up, semantics, ontologies, and taxonomies and so forth, and graphs. And it's like, it's interesting. I was talking with Paco Nathan actually at your conference.
Love that guy.
That guy's cool.
That guy's cool.
Yeah.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah, he's such an OG. We were talking, because he's got a lot of context. He's been doing machine learning and AI for like 40 plus years or something. So, but we're talking about kind of the pendulum swing between like statistical learning and symbolic, AI and so forth. And it seems like we're sort of revisiting a lot of the old concepts again, because there's a lot of things that probably work. It's one thing to, I think, to try and throw as much compute as you want to at a problem, but at some point, maybe there's some richness you can get with the symbolic stuff that, just cranking out more GPUs at a problem isn't going to really help you with as much. So there's kind of a point of diminishing returns, which I think we're seeing with the LLMs right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, but are they better? I don't know.
Which is why the cynical view of agents is like, agents have to get us there because LLMs did not. So the hype train's got to keep rolling. It's just got to roll into the next thing.
It kind of reminds me of like an MLM, like a multi-level marketing scheme now, where you just have like all these agents in your downline. Sort of forming it out because of the other one.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Hopefully you're at the top of the pyramid. That is the important
go
part.
pays up.
Yeah.
That's the LLM. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting. What are some of the threads you're seeing when you talk to people, in your podcast? Like, what are some of the things you're seeing in the zeitgeist as of late?
So there's two things that I'll touch on that come to mind right away. One is on choosing the right use case, and the other is just how the ROI of good old traditional ML, it's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere, dude.
That is one thing. I think you could get caught up in the hype of the last 2 years, and you could think that now LLMs are going to be used for fraud detection and for recommender systems and for churn prediction or whatever it may be. And maybe you could do that, but it's not optimal. And
Yeah,
it's not really going to work that well. So it's probably going to be more expensive, and it's probably not going to be the best way to do it.
for
So
sure. And it's
that
harder
is,
to do it anyway. It's
yeah,
harder,
exactly. Like
you
you
know.
have to really do some gymnastics to make it work like that. So that is why, actually, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the virtual conference on data engineering for ML, because it
Yeah.
feels to me like the traditional ML has been so swept under the rug for the past 2 years with LLMs sucking all the air out of the room and everyone wanting to go and work on these RAG use cases, when in reality you're like, yeah, so this chat with your data, it's cool and everything, but that recommender system, I don't know if you saw on the Amazon. I talked to Miguel on the podcast a month ago, and he is kind of like king of recommender systems. He's working at Microsoft right now, and he was doing a lot of computer vision and deep learning stuff, robotics in the early part of his career. And he read the Amazon, 10K? And he said, whoa, in there, he recognized that 32% of the Amazon shop revenue came from recommendations. And so you can imagine how much revenue that is, because I think it's like 100 billion that they had in revenue. So 32% of that is 32 billion. It doesn't matter how many data scientists are working on their recommendation engine at Amazon, it's always going to be ROI positive. You cannot have enough data scientists working on a recommender engine to use 32 billion in salary. Let's just get that super clear. So he saw that and he said, I got to change careers. I'm not doing
Yeah.
computer vision anymore. I'm going to recommender systems. And
Smart.
it just hasn't changed, and it hasn't gotten, if anything, there's more money being made now with traditional ML because the space has matured in the past 2 years or 4 years or 10 years, however. It's just been continuing at its rate of maturity, even though LLMs came out, and that was the hype train.
Yeah. I remember the same thing happened with deep learning, actually, when that came out. Because I mean, before that, if you're dealing with unstructured data sets, for example, like images and so forth, right? I think kind of state of the art might have been support vector machines back in the day. This is like early 2010s, late 2000s. But then with tabular data, right? So rows and columns, kind of corporate data sets.
Mm-hmm.
The old school techniques work just fine, and then deep learning comes along. I think everyone's like, well, this is obviously going to just crush all the old school techniques, but guess which technique is still the most prominently used for tabular data? XGBoost, which is not deep learning.
Not
and
quite.
so, but that's still the old workhorse. If you're using tabular data, that's what most people are using these days, right? And that's just kind of how it is. Or something in sklearn, scikit-learn. Still old school. But I always joke that we're sort of in this classical machine learning winter right now, where all the old school stuff is just kind of thrown to the wayside because it's what always happens. The same thing happened with deep learning for a while, where everyone's like, well, deep learning, you don't even need to process your data anymore. You just throw it all in and just let it do its thing. And that works great for images and stuff, where it's, I think, you're bound by the dimensions and the RGBs of your image, for example. But like for tabular data, that I haven't seen it work as well. That's just how it is. But people are enamored by that, and the same with LLMs. Like I saw, last year a lot of papers about LLMs for doing time series forecasting and traditional ML workloads. And like I think the traditional stuff works just fine. It's worked fine for decades. But
Yeah.
okay. So
because
there's so many there's certain patterns constraint inherent in the data set itself that these techniques really lend themselves well to, and even old school statistical stuff. So like transformer model simply isn't built for those types of workloads. That's just how it is.
That's exactly how it is. And so that is huge for me right now. It feels like
that's cool.
I want to just make sure that we don't forget about that. And there are a lot of people out there that are working with this, and I feel like they haven't been serviced, or they haven't had as many resources come out, because all the attention and all that hype has been faced towards LLMs, and that's all you hear about. So I'm trying to
pushback though from people like saying, Demetrios, you're kind of out of touch. Like, why are you working on this, these conferences and this, like these old corpses,
Yeah, nobody cares about making money anymore. We just care about how big that model is. How many parameters? Did you fine tune it? Did you prune it, or did you distill it? That's all I care about. That's really what paper from what Facebook AI research company or wing did you read for your model? And not quite too much pushback. I will say this, like I am just as bad as the next guy. I talk to people about LLMs every day on the podcast, and so it's not like I am a saint here saying it, but I like to keep a finger on the pulse. And really what I'm seeing is exactly that. I think it's pretty well established that there's a lot of traditional ML that's still making a ton of cash for companies and should be thought of as more valuable, or at least the same amount of value as your new Gen AI exploration that you can't really prove out the ROI of yet. And that brings me to that next point I wanted to make, which is, okay, let's say you're doing AI and you have a Center of AI Excellence committee at your job, which sounds like the best job ever. If anyone wants to let me know how I can apply for a job like that, I would love to get that job, because it just sounds like go waste a bunch of money. So
wouldn't you just have an agent do that?
Yeah, exactly. We could have a few of them, yeah. But I don't think they would be able to burn the amount of money that I would need to burn to have that title. So no shade on the people that are actually in that job position. I think the key here is choosing the use cases that are really going to bring you that ROI. And right now it feels like people are not thinking through, okay, let's imagine this works perfectly. What does that actually accomplish? So I had awesome guy come on the podcast, Tom Smoker, and he was the first one that raised this issue to me. And he was saying, he was brought in to create an HR chatbot, and it was really difficult to do just in general because of all the reasons why RAG is difficult.
What's an AI HR chatbot?
So you could, this is the kicker. You could, instead of talking to a person, like an HR person, and asking them your questions, like, hey, did you get my invoice that I sent? Or I needed to fill out these expenses and I haven't seen the money come in yet, or whatever it may be. How do I fill out the expenses? What tools do we use? How many days of holiday do I have left? All of that fun stuff, right? So he said, first of all, he got in there, he had to level set that you're never going to get 100% right responses, which hopefully everyone knows that by now when it comes to these chatbots. But I think not everyone does, especially if you're not in working with LLMs all the time and you don't recognize that it's really unreliable. And no matter what you do, even if you are doing incredible architecture on your RAG, that advanced RAG, not the naive RAG, you've got the advanced RAG, you've got the graph RAG, whatever you may be throwing at your RAG, you're still going to never get that 99% accuracy rate, right? Or 100% accuracy rate. And then the kicker is that, okay, cool, let's just pretend like we got 100%. Now your employees can ask a chatbot how many days holiday they have left. How much money did that just make us or save us? Because let's compare this to the Amazon example again. 32 billion. And somebody needs to fact check me on that number because I may just be saying it out of turn, but a whole boatload of cash from a recommender system versus how do you quantify somebody being able to ask a chatbot how many days holiday? And then think about all the engineering time and effort and cycles that went into creating that very advanced RAG. So that's what I think is, for me, something that I don't see that many people talking about. Like, really think through your use case. Think through how much, what is the best case scenario here? And what is it really going to accomplish if we get it really, 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 really good?
Yeah. That's an interesting example because HR is also a weird one where there's a lot of, well, I'd say weird. It just is what it is. There's privacy, right, and confidentiality. So you're gonna so all your prompts are now kind of stored as embeddings. Like, Demetrios is looking at me weird at the lunch table. Like, I want to file a complaint against him.
Which, I have been known to look at you a little bit weird, Joe. So that could potentially be a prompt saved somewhere.
But I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, because that should be confidential, right? But if you had access to that system, you could look at it like, okay, so what sorts of things are being asked here?
And don't even talk about one of the employees who doesn't know much is like perusing Reddit and recognizes, if I just say a few of these prompts, I could probably get inside of the database, or I could get it to return me some information that it shouldn't be. And if you didn't architect your RAG properly and you're making sure that you don't have this sensitive data leakage, then that could be easy. I think that's a little bit more of a extreme case. I just would really think about what is the potential return on investment. And so I've seen it done right. I'll give the other side of the coin, because an HR chatbot, hopefully nobody's doing that. Like 2024 is hopefully not the year of the HR chatbot. But if somebody out there wants to show me why I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear it.
The year of the HR chatbot, it's like a Chinese New Year or something. Makes sense. I don't think this is the year for it. I don't think this is the year for it. I don't think next year's the year for it. No.
Exactly. So so the way that I saw it done right is from Philip at Honeycomb, I think is where he's working at. And he wrote a year and a half ago. They were really early on the bandwagon of trying to incorporate LLMs into their product. And he wrote an awesome blog post that everyone, I think, should read about LLMs, all the hard stuff nobody tells you about, or something like that. He wrote it over a year ago. It's super cool to see because it breaks down his learnings over the 6 months or 5 months that he was incorporating the LLM feature into their product. And what he told me was, okay, look, first of all, this feature, we are now trying to make it easier to have our potential customers hit a metric that historically, if someone hits this metric, they have a higher percent chance of becoming a customer. So if this LLM feature now makes it easier for them to hit that metric, we can really see a return on investment. Because if just one person is able to become a customer because of this feature, it makes all of those LLM calls that we've spent money on, makes them all ROI positive.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because you're reducing friction for the customer, right?
Yep.
So like that's a big thing, though. I think you're hitting on something where like it's the old saying. I think when things started kind of turning south with the tech world a couple of years ago, but I kept hearing friends just say, "Show me the money. Like, what are the use cases that are actually going to help us make money?"
Yeah.
And not some gee whiz like the HR example you bring up. I think that's interesting. That's cool, but it's not going to bring money in the door. So, are there other things we can prioritize ahead of this?
Mm-hmm.
Unless HR is such a junk show that you need an LLM in front of it. I don't know. But in that case, I would say you have bigger problems at your company.
Yeah.
So, like Demetrios over here. Just
exactly. I need that HR chatbot, man. I'm getting so embarrassed just because I brought up that example. I should have done it.
No, it's an interesting one though. You're seeing a lot of, I think, but you're seeing this across the board where companies are trying to shoehorn in, LLMs and into all the workflows, because I think the expectation is that this is going to increase productivity and potentially reduce headcount. So with that argument, right, the economic question I'd have is, okay, so like, what does this free up HR to do that they couldn't do otherwise? Does this allow me to wholesale just remove my entire HR department or streamline it and I just have a bot running it? That would be an argument, but then I'm like, okay, so if all the problems you have in your business, this
Klarna. Did you see their blog post that came out?
Which one? The one about their customer service team?
Yeah, and they were able to do the work of 700 employees with AI. So
maybe they
first of all, I call bullshit on that. I would love to get specific details, not just a blog post on how, we did this. And then it turns out, they're filing to go public soon. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, because what was it, like a 40% or 40, some number in savings, right? But it wasn't really clear if they laid off the team or if they just were able to realize the potential of that many people with this new AI.
I don't think they laid them off. I think, it was realizing the potential or, not hiring.
Which is a weird way to gaslight your employees, like saying, we could just replace you with a robot, but we're not because we care about you. So,
oh man,
but you better be nice.
Yeah, talk about, we need a HR chatbot for that type of gaslighting happening. I need to file a complaint.
Well, I was at a conference. I was speaking in where the hell was I? In Saudi Arabia earlier this year, and somebody brought up the Klarna example. This woman on
it's giving a talk right before mine. Child.
Oh, it's a poster child, but she's like, we should do this everywhere in every company. It's like, one, you're absolutely evil, and two, just as a human being, you're evil for saying that. And two, it just seemed like a very blanket statement to make, right? I mean, there's a lot of nuance. I did a podcast on this last week where I talked about, okay, so if you take the hypothesis that these AI workflows, agents, and so forth, it'll increase productivity. Do you have a corresponding increase in the quality of your output, right? Or are you actually decreasing quality while doing more things? These aren't the same. And so the whole point was, it was just, it was really a talk about, we should be striving for quality as well, not just doing more stuff quickly, because that's kind of a road to ruin if you're doing shitty things and then you do shitty things. So, but it got me thinking, okay, so like with this whole notion that we can increase productivity, like what's the trade-off?
Well, the other piece that I hear people continuously talk about when it comes to increased productivity is it's always self-reported.
Yeah.
It's like, is AI helping you? Of course it is. It's helping me. How much? A lot. It's like
all the time.
Yeah. You want to talk about like data, a little bit of data reliability issues. That seems like a great place to start.
Which is ironic because we're all supposed to be data driven, right? But we're just like throwing out the handbook thing. It makes my life easier. Are you using any AI stuff in your day-to-day life?
I am. So beyond like Perplexity and GPT-4 type stuff, I do A lot of what I would call, so, all right, let me break it down. Yes and no. There is some very deep advanced use cases that I have been doing when it comes to keyword research and SEO and blogging and that type of stuff, because my friend he's got an SEO agency, and he's been able to leverage workflows to build various LLM calls and get some really cool keyword research, or recognizing which keywords are the easiest to rank for, et cetera, et cetera. And then from that workflow, so that's one workflow, just figuring out what the keywords you want to be ranking for are. And then another workflow can be, all right, now create me an outline for some blog posts that are going to be ranking for these keywords. And you have various LLM calls and prompts, and really tweaking the prompts to make sure that the outline is good. And then from there, you can either have someone write it, I can write it, or you can write it, whoever, or you can try and get an LLM to write different pieces of it, and then you go and edit it through. I've just been diving into that because my buddy is so deep down the rabbit hole that I love seeing what he has been doing as a non-technical person. And
Oh, that's cool.
this is another piece. He's using all low code, no code tools for these workflows, and he's incorporating. So he is a marketing master, right? And he's able to take his marketing chops and then know, it goes back to the agent thing. And he's the one that asked me, if you had 1,000 assistants that you could leverage right now, what would you have them do? And so he goes, oh, it's really important that you understand what good looks like when it comes out of these workflows. Because if you don't understand what good looks like, anything can pass. And what I've been really excited about is that he is finding so much value in AI that, and he has no technical background per se, but what he's been able to do with it is phenomenal, just by learning through doing and putting this stuff together. And then I juxtapose that with the time and energy and resources that folks are putting into creating their own LLM ecosystem, internal. Maybe they're using open source because they want to use a llama model, and they're trying to make sure that they're serving the models and doing all this. And there's a lot of energy and resources that are going into that. But it goes back to this idea of, do you know your use case, and do you know how much ROI this is going to get? Because my buddy, who's a marketer, is able to use some off-the-shelf, no-code, low-code solution, get a ton of value. And if you're asking your engineering team and your AI ML team to set up the AI ecosystem without having that marketing use case first, then it's almost like what you're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah. Yep. That's really interesting too, because marketing is one of those things where I think you get there's a positive feedback loop in terms of what you create, right? Either the marketing efforts are working or they're not. So it's super cool that you're trying to do that.
The metrics, and that's what's been cool to see. He also created such a great use case where he created a AI apps page. It's kind of similar to there's an AI for this. And he did it through so many different Zapier integrations with Airtable. And he's using these no-code AI tools that can plug into the Airtable instance. When you need the AI, you've got it, but you also have got 10 other tools that are working on Airtable. So it's like Airtable is his command center, and then AI is just one piece of that. And through that, he was able to create I think, over 20,000 pages of AI apps. And he saw the website traffic go from like 100,000 hits a month to 2 million hits a month. And so it's easy to say, all right, well, that brought us some serious traffic. There's some ROI there.
It's really interesting. What does your friend want to do next? Does he want to be on a podcast? Just kidding.
Yeah, for sure. I think he should talk about it more because it is inspiring to see him with just the drive to make it work and the skills of being a marketer and understanding the marketing space and the SEO space, and then being able to leverage AI for that. And so I've been watching what he's doing a ton in that regard. And he's just building out workflows. Honestly, he's just so many cool workflows that you've got. And this goes back to like why the original question you asked me, am I using AI in my day to day? I've got workflows for the podcast where I'll put it through, transcribe it, then just get cool clips, get ideas from it, get different abstracts, keywords that we can put on our YouTube channel. All of that stuff is really easy to create a workflow for, and different prompts, and get these different, it's more inspiration than anything, because, and it also helps me because potentially the person who is helping me edit the podcast, sometimes they don't understand what we're talking about. And so when they run it through these workflows, they're able to more or less approximate what an abstract could be. But then it goes back to, you got to know what good looks like. And so I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot in that case. But up until now, it's been all right.
Sick.
Yeah.
Something similar. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. There's, and I'm super bullish on all of these non-technical use cases, like the ones who can really leverage AI right now don't have to be the AI engineers, right?
Well, this is, I think, who it's for, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for the every person, right?
Yeah.
And there's some cool stuff. I mean, you can, make images, generate copy, I think, of varying degrees of quality, but it is what it is, especially if you're just doing SEO, which is kind of just, it used to be just farmed out to sweatshops anyway, and now you can just get a robot to do it. I think you just did humanity a service, actually.
Yeah, exactly. You're never going to have success if you just go to the LLM and you say, create me a blog around this. You really have to do that prompting, and then you have to create sections of the blog. You can't create the whole blog. And that's what you see, the people who are really knee deep in this, like my buddy, he is creating the intro, then he's creating the body, and it's going off of the outline that he has created prior to this, which is coming from the keyword research that he has created prior to this. So it's really not just like going to ChatGPT and prompting it and thinking you can copy paste what comes out, because that is the definition of AI slop. I like to think that if you do it a little bit more sophisticated, it can return greater results, just because most people aren't doing it like that.
Nope.
I don't think you're getting a unique opinion or perspective. So yeah, I am still a little conflicted about it in some ways, but for the most part, if you're just trying to go for SEO and it's not like Joe Reese's personal blog or Substack, then whatever, like try to get up in the rankings.
Closing out, like, what are you excited about over the next year?
There's so many things, man. So much cool stuff happening in the space, obviously. And even though we're doing all kinds of surveys in the community and creating reports from those. That's always fun. just to see what the pulse is from the community. What do people care about? What are they saying is important to them? And then getting to share that with the community and share that with the broader community, not just people that are in the MLOps community. And doing virtual conference are fun. We're doing another one, like I mentioned, the data engineering for ML and AI virtual conference on September 12th. That's probably top of mind for me right now.
Yep.
But I mean, we started off this conversation talking about community in general and just interfacing with different companies and community and thinking about how best to interface if you're a company with a community, or whether it's your own or it's somebody else's or some third party community, that type of thing. And so recognizing cool ways to get companies involved in the MLOps community that don't feel like it's just putting an ad up.
That works all the time, though, Demetrios.
So, well, as I mentioned to you, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect with people who have a performance marketing mindset and they come into community expecting that performance attribution that you can get from something like a Facebook ad. Right. And you're just shooting yourself in the foot if you think, I'm going to sponsor community and then I'm going to see cloud signups. It's like that is the worst way of looking at it. That you really can't. It's going to be really hard to find success like that. I think that's one thing I've learned over the years.
It is, and I've seen this too. I work with I think a lot of vendors approach me to work with them. I usually tell them no, unless we're friends or unless I use their product. And even then, I'm kind of like whatever. But I mean, but you do see this. I think it's kind of a performance marketing kind of growth hacker mindset where it's like, oh, let's see if obviously Facebook ads and Google ads have gotten us so and so results and so forth. But if we can just tap into the community, right? Yeah. But that's always the hard part because like the community, it exists for its own reasons, and those reasons typically don't involve vendors. I think 100%. Much to the dismay of vendors, but it's a reality check. The enlightened ones get it. I feel like there are definitely some vendors out there who are extremely transactional and are like, well, they can view community engagement as a coin operation. And it doesn't. And the thing is, a community can see it. I think very, very quickly and sniff it out and ignore it, or if it's bad enough, they'll troll you and you'll have even a worse time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that is when fun things happen. Exactly. If it's really in your face and it's really bad, then you're getting trolled, or you will never be able to live it down.
Examples of this would be vendors who comb through chats, leave comments about their products, will DM people about their products. Like this is bad behavior that has existed from day one in your community. I think you did a good job of managing it, but those kind of characters, they need to be booted immediately. So
I had to, and it's funny how that's really calmed down. I'm not sure why exactly. I think it might just be because of the culture we set up. It might also be because of the onboarding flow that we've got right now. But the thing that I recognize in any community, and specifically with the MLOps community, everyone is joining for their own reasons. So you join potentially because you're looking for a job, or you're trying to hire, or you're trying to promote your product, or you're trying to learn from your peers, or just meet others that feel like they want to learn this stuff too. And so we tried to map out all these different learning journeys throughout the MLOps community and figure out what are the different personas that are coming into the community and why are they coming into the community. And from there, when you join the community now, we will ask you, very on the nose, why are you joining this community? And we'll give you these boxes. And then there's also the idea of other, so that we know how to better serve you. And what we do, and this is some project that we've been working on for the past too long. When you come in and you say, I'm a data engineer and I want to learn more about MLOps, and I also want to meet others in this space, we send you a series of emails. We also will send you some Slack messages that say, hey, you should join these channels. There's a data engineering channel. There's also a local channel for, you're in Salt Lake. Cool. We've got a local Salt Lake meetup. There's this, because you identified these certain things, and that triggers a workflow for us. And if you're a VC and you're saying, I want to just keep my finger on the pulse and I want to know what the community is talking about, then we say, well, there's these things that you can do to stay up to date on this. And we've got these channels of people that are founders and maybe they're looking for money. So we try to map out all the potential ways and reasons that people are coming into the community, and then figure out how to best serve the members. And that's it's a little bit of a tangent on the spamming and the way that vendors interface with it, but I can tell you, man, it for some reason we're seeing less spamming. We're seeing, and we've been seeing it for the past year and a half. And
it's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's due to those efforts too. I mean, it kind of makes me want to sign up for a new account on there to see what the workflow is like.
Go through the workflow. We can. That's awesome. Yeah,
I'll pretend to be various different people, like a VC and a.
Yes, the various aliases. It's totally that. That's so good. So yeah, because it took so long to figure that out. In retrospect, it was right in front of me, but I was doing it where for a while we would let in anybody to Slack, but then they wouldn't know about all these other things that we're doing. So the virtual conferences or the newsletter or the podcast or whatever it may be, they would just be in Slack, and maybe they'd stick around, maybe they wouldn't. And then we started doing it where I would have a application process. So I had to by hand approve every single person that was joining. And there's like 100 people that join a week. So if I took 2 weeks off, now I got to go through 200 applications and see. And then we recognize that there's these journeys that people take, or it's really like the reasons people join. And so from there, we started figuring out, all right, how can we better serve the community through these journeys?
Like side quests.
Side quests. Yeah, we should do fun side quests. Like, hey, you get 10 points if you can do XYZ. Oh, now I gotta.
Now I put you on a side quest. Jeez.
Yeah, now I gotta go on a side quest to make that happen. That's so funny. Oh, that is so good, though. That's such a good one. Oh, I love it. So wait to sign up for the community again until I tell you the side quests are ready. And then, the people who actually do the side quest get shirts, or they get some kind of swag or merch that we've got. That could be cool. Or they can give a talk.
Though. Yeah, legendary merch. Everyone likes it. The ChatGPT shirts and the Chat DMT is the other one. So
that's it. I got to pay you your commission for being my influencer that I sponsor. It's so good. Whenever I see you wearing it, it always makes me smile. And that one is probably the most provocative. We've also got the other one. I don't know if you saw it, but it's Kubernetes as a gateway drug.
I think I've seen it around. I can't remember. It's not as catchy as the ChatGPT one, though.
No, I hallucinate more than ChatGPT is. That was.
I mean, I wear it around when I'm traveling. Wear it to the airport lounge, and it was like, definitely get a lot of double takes for sure.
Yeah.
Some high fives, and it's a good shirt. Like I think if this one wears out, I want to get another one. So
there we go. Well, just tell me when, and I'll send it to you. You're you're the best. Man,
Yeah,
thanks
well,
for
awesome,
having
man.
me
It's
on
good.
here, dude.
Yeah, anytime, dude. Anytime. Yeah, it's good to see you, and we'll have to go skiing sometime in Utah whenever you're out here. I know that
Yes.
we'll talk, and it's a podcast for another time, but yeah. So
That
anyway, dude,
great
it's good chatting.
Utah snow.
It's the
I
best
look
snow on
forward
earth,
to it.
dude. Period. Yeah. Take it easy, man.
Peace.
Bye bye.